A couple of days ago, a video popped up on Reddit about an impossible to beat level using an unbreakable RNG lock with a 1,000,000,000 to 1 chance of anybody clearing it. The idea of beating this level immediately intrigued me. To demonstrate how the level works, please watch the video in question by Squiderman, link in the description below, but to summarize very quickly. There's the starting area and 4 rooms the player has to go through. And each time Mario enters one of the 4 rooms, a bunch of Hammer Bros are spawned, are allowed to move for a second, and then they are killed. The bob-ombs they carried are set loose, but before they could enjoy their newfound freedom, they are detonated. Where they blow up depends on the random movement of the Hammer Bros, giving each explosion configuration a 1 in a 1024 chance to occur. One of these will blow up all the blocks below, which will later allow a mushroom to pass through and release the key. Since Mario Maker 2's randomness can be pretty exactly manipulated using Mario's movement, here's how this can be set up. You build a room, but instead of placing specific blocks you want to blow up, you put down every block that could blow up. Then you enter the room using a set of normalized movements that can be executed identically, consistently. Let the bob-ombs blow up, and take note of what they blew up. Go back to edit mode and delete the rest. Henceforth, whenever you enter the room using the same movement, the way for Mr. Shroom's journey is cleared. Goof around before entering and you get a 1 in 1024 chance of that happening. Have the same type of room 4 times in a row, and random goofy movement will yield the intended 1 in a trillion chance of the level getting cleared. And here's the story of the 3 days it took me to find the normalized moves necessary to beat this level. Since the creator made sure not to offer any information unnecessary for random guessing, for any chance of clearing this, the first step had to be rebuilding the level in the editor from scratch. Big love to Vizlus, the legend, and his level viewer. With the level rebuilt, I had to learn more about the RNG system, so I opened an empty level and started experimenting. Since most of what I learned on day 1 was pretty banal and I imagine well documented, instead I'll give a quick rundown on how the RNG counter actually works. If you want to be exact, there is no RNG counter. Computers generate random numbers using pseudo-random number generators, which basically take in a number, the seed, use some math to spit out a seemingly unrelated number, the random number, then remember this new number, which they will use as the seed on the next call. Sometimes the random number is used, like determining where a Hammer Bro moves, other times is discarded, as the desired effect is just to change the seed for the next call, like once when Mario ducks or 3 times when enemies or gizmos are loaded. Sometimes these types of calls can be mixed, like when a coin is dropped by a bomb. First, the floating coin is replaced by a dropping coin sprite, which is the type that makes 3 random calls just to advance the seed. Then the direction is determined by the next call, and finally, when it hits the ground, the bounce distance by another for a total of 5 calls. I did more research, specifically data collection to find a string of values I can use to recreate the chain of random numbers Nintendo uses in SMM2 levels. For this, I needed a game item that uses only 1 random call to do anything useful. And it turned out that Clown Car RNG fits that bill. I put a randomly moving clown car down, then I set up a door and got to ducking and note-taking. After this, I spent the rest of the afternoon running various experiments, changing variables and learning for the fun of learning, but by the evening I got to the point. I needed 2 things. The PRNG algo Nintendo uses, and the seed they use for SMM2 levels. Yes, I did check if the same seed was used for every level, and should the answer have been different, the seed would have to be contained within the level files, which would also have been somewhat convenient. As for the algorithm, I'd like to offer my thanks to these 12 lovely folks who took the time to decompile and publish a shit ton of Nintendo code. Take my love, you legends. With the code copied, I needed to find the seed, and this could have been a massive endeavor. This here method takes in a 32-bit word as a parameter, meaning that there is a potential for over 4 billion starting seeds. Not to even talk about this one, which takes in 4 32-bit words. I would write 0 for both, and if these wouldn't pan out, I would need to write some gnarly CUDA code to get my graphics card involved and search that gigantic space of numbers for one that starts a chain of random numbers that contains numbers that end in ones and zeros, matching the pattern I found in the clown car. Then, if I could use the following numbers in the chain to predict the movement of the clown car, I could say I found the seed. Then there was a serious chance that maybe Nintendo didn't use the last bit of a number to determine a 50-50 chance like normal people do, because, well, they are Nintendo and they are weird. Or that I suck at CUDA coding and I can't even complete the project. Or that for this specific game, they used a different PRNG algorithm. To be honest, I expected my effort to die here. But before it got to that, I was hopefully going to look through the first few thousand numbers in the chain that started with 0. Let the cert... That was it. Turns out Nintendo uses the last bits for 50-50 events and sees level RNG with 0. With the full RNG chain at my disposal, I needed one more thing before I could get to cracking the code. To figure out Hammer Bros in a line. To be more precise, if I load in a room with that configuration of enemies, in the ensuing chain of random events, where will I find the numbers that describe whether they go left or right? What I quickly found is that if you load in the room at different points in the RNG chain, after a certain amount of calls, the pattern the bros give will repeat, shifting by one position. Which was wonderful news, since it meant that each bro is making an identical amount of RNG calls as they load, so the pattern of movement defining numbers will be as simple as every nth after the first. Once I finally had this information, it was time to crack the code. The process was simple. First, find out how many RNG iterations I need to have happened as I entered the room. To do this, I typed the pattern of lefts and rights in and checked it against the first few thousand entries in the RNG chain using the pattern I established earlier. This gave me all the possible numbers I could aim for to destroy all the blocks in the mushroom's way. Then, place blocks in all spots where bombs could blow up. The original level uses turn blocks and ice blocks to indicate left or right. I use them for correct, as in exists in the level, or incorrect, I placed it there for science. Then, pick a normalized movement pattern and enter the room using it. Enter the resulting pattern to the program and determine where I was in the chain to get these results. Using this information, adjust the movement pattern and then repeat. This sounds simple, but after a while it got tedious. For this to have worked, I had to go through the entire normalized movement pattern for every single iteration. With the second room taking a long pattern and the tasks being repetitive, it's easy to lose focus and make stupid mistakes, which then compounds the problems, so I stayed up way too late acquiring the code. But by the end of the day, I had it and realized I don't know how to do the random Kaizo part tagged onto the end of the level. My tired, exhausted brain looked at this and came up with run in with momentum, up throw, spin jump, boop the shell with your head, bounce off it as it comes back from the wall, like a momentum spin triangle jump. So instead I went to sleep. Next morning I realized just up throwing and shell jumping works, and so I practiced that until I felt relatively consistent. And then I went into the real level. Does this method mean that RNG locks are universally broken? Not necessarily. But it does mean any future levels will have to account for attacks that use the public nature of the level RNG chain. The best direction to go from here would be to add unrelated RNG events to the mix and try to find a way to make the significant RNG events happen out of order. Maybe even add events that sometimes happen, sometimes not. This would jumble up the call pattern, making it more difficult to find the numbers responsible for any particular final state the room is left in. While none of this would completely prevent the code from getting cracked, it would require a significant effort on the attacker's part to find the pattern needed to identify where they are on the chain. This of course would also take more sprites, and given how this level already reached ELA, it would come at the expense of the brute force resistance of the level. Thank you very much for watching.